Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be continuing our discussion about cells. Specifically, we're going to look at cell structure and function. These are the actual parts of the cell and what they do and what they look at like. There's no deep understanding here. There's no I don't understand this topic. There's make flashcards. If I say mitochondria, you need to be able to tell me what it does or what it looks like. It's just as simple as that. It's matching. You just need to know the function and you need to know what it looks like. The individual parts of a cell are known as organelles, which literally means little organs. So there's many different parts of a eukaryotic cell. Each individual little pouch is an organelle that has a specific function inside the cell. Just like you have organs, you have lungs, you have liver, each cell also has little tiny organelles, which act like little tiny organs to help the cell survive. The first organelle that you need to know is the cell membrane. It is a double layer called a lipid bilayer. In the next section, we'll go into more detail about the cell membrane and its important function. But you can see in the picture, it's basically a little fat sandwich. You have the head sticking out here, and you have another lipid layer down here. So if it's a double layer. It's flexible and strong. You don't want it to be too rigid, otherwise you wouldn't be able to move. And there's also, it's not just fat, there's also some proteins like here and some carbohydrates also on the exterior of the cell membrane. What is the function of the cell membrane? Its main job is to regulate what enters and leaves your cell. So it's really that gateway, it's that guardian that's going to control what can enter your cell and what can leave your cell. It also provides some protection and some support. Basically, without a cell membrane, you don't have a cell because you don't have any exterior separating the cell from the environment. The next organelle is the cell wall, which is on the outside of the cell membrane. Not all organisms have a cell wall. They're found in plants, algae, fungi, and in many prokaryotes, aka bacteria. The function of a cell wall is to provide support and protection for the cell. So it's a very rigid structure like a true wall. That's why things that have cell walls, usually you don't think about them as moving and dancing. Plants, fungi, they're stationary because they have that cell wall. The next organelle is we have cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is the jelly-like substance found inside your cells. It's made mostly of water. The function is basically just to be there and just to provide a medium for the organelles to move around in and slosh around in. So there's no real function, it's just the liquid in your cells that allow things to move around and actually dissolve and allow chemical reactions to occur in your cytoplasm. Vacuoles are a sac-like structure. In plants, there's only one single vacuole, as we can see in the picture of the plant cell. There's one massive vacuole up here. While in animal cells, we can see that we have a bunch of tiny little vacuoles. So that's one of the key differences between plants and animal cells is plants have a large central vacuole, while animals have much tinier vacuoles, which we'll talk about in class why you think that actually is. Because there is a reason why animals have a much larger vacuole plants have a much larger vacuole than animals do. The function of a vacuole is to store materials. Could be water, could be salt, could be proteins, could be carbohydrates. Basically, it vacuums up all of the nutrients and it's going to store it for later. Some unicellular organisms also have a contractile vacuole, which is used to pump excess water outside the cell. But the main one you need to know, the main function you need to know is that it stores materials. Next one we got is ribosomes. Ribosomes are made up of RNA and protein together. It's actually two subunits like down here, which we won't go into much detail about. Usually you see them depicted as little black dots. All these guys here are ribosomes. All the little green dots down here are also ribosomes. They're found throughout the cytoplasm, so they naturally float around the cytoplasm, and they're also found on this membrane known as the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The function of a ribosome is to assemble and to synthesize proteins. So ribosomes basically are little protein factories. Next up, rough endoplasmic reticulum, also known as the rough ER because no one likes saying endoplasmic reticulum a million times. So the structure of it is a folded membrane located outside the nucleus. And the reason why we call it rough is because the ribosomes are actually stuck on the surface, and it gives the surface a rough texture. What's the function of the rough ER? This is where, because it has ribosomes, proteins are actually going to be made here, but the only ones that are going to be made here are the ones that are actually going to be released or exported from the cell. So basically, this is a factory that's going to export proteins out of the cell. So you can see here, this is the rough ER. Notice that it is rough. It has all these little ribosomes on it, so to the naked eye it appears rough. And notice that the proteins here are eventually going to be the ones that are going to get shot out of your cell. They don't stay inside your cell if they're made at the rough ER. There's another type of ER in your cell known as the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Very similar structure. The only difference is that it's not rough, it's smooth, meaning that it does not have ribosomes. The function of the smooth ER is, one, it actually makes your lipids, so it's going to make the lipids that become your cell membrane. Another important function is that it's detoxification of drugs. So your liver has lots of smooth ER because it has to detox the drugs that you consume, whether it's alcohol, smoking, or just even medications that you take when you're sick. All those things have to be detoxified in your smooth ER so your cells don't die. And that's what I just said about liver cells. So liver cells contain lots and lots of smooth ER. Here we can see that the smooth ER is the one over here. Notice that there is no rough texture. There are no ribosomes on the smooth ER. Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus looks very similar to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. However, it is further away from the nucleus. It's this stack of closely opposed membranes. So all these guys are just basically a stack of little membranes like bologna stuck on top of each other. The function of the Golgi apparatus is we think of it as a packaging center. Basically, we call it the UPS of the cell. So this is where you're going to modify, you're going to sort, and then you're going to package the proteins. So either it's going to get sent out or it might get shipped to someplace else in the cell. So the Golgi apparatus, Golgi body, they're all the same. The Golgi apparatus is your packaging and shipping center. Proteins go in on one end, they get a label on it just like at the post office, and then it's going to ship it on different little mail trucks, aka vesicles, wherever it needs to go. Mitochondria. The mitochondria is shaped like a bean. So you can see down here the mitochondria. It's enclosed by two membranes. You have the outer membrane, which is this dark membrane, and then you have an inner membrane, which is this lighter membrane. And then there's space inside full of liquid, which we're not going to discuss right now. The function of the mitochondria, it's known as mighty mitochondria. Its job is to actually create ATP, which is the chemical energy for your cells. So its job is it's actually going to convert the energy in your food into ATP, or chemical energy that your cells can use. So mitochondria's job is extremely important because you can eat all the food you want. Your cells actually need ATP to power themselves. So the mitochondria is going to convert food energy into ATP. So we have food, the energy in the mitochondria is going to convert into ATP, which is the energy your cells require. Nucleus. The nucleus is surrounded by a nuclear envelope, so it does have its own membrane, its own protection to make sure that it doesn't become damaged. The function of the nucleus is to contain all the cell's DNA, so all of the DNA is located there. So therefore, the nucleus is said to be like the town hall of the city. So it's going to be the control center. Since the DNA is there, it's going to control every cellular action. So it's going to tell the cell whether to divide, whether to make more of this product. It's going to instruct the cell what actually to do to survive and thrive in the environment. The nucleolus is found inside of the nucleus. So this entire thing down here on the right is the nucleus. This dark spot is the nucleolus. It's inside of the nucleus. Its function is, this is actually where those protein factories, these ribosomes, are being made. So the nucleolus inside the nucleus is where the ribosomes are actually made, and then they leave, and then they can actually start making proteins out in the cytoplasm. The nuclear membrane is the membrane found on the outside of the nucleus, very similar to your cell membrane. Basically, its job is it's also going to control what can enter and leave the nucleus. So you want certain things getting in and out of your cell, but you even want a stricter guideline of what can actually get into your nucleus. You don't want anyone being able to get into your nucleus and mess with your DNA, because if you mess with the DNA, the cell possibly could die. So it's much more strict on what can enter and leave the nucleus. Lysosome sounds like Lysol. It's a small little organelle filled with enzymes. Just like Lysol, its job is going to actually digest and break down. It's going to break down lipids and carbohydrates. It's going to break down old organelles. So after the organelle dies, you got to get rid of it. So it's actually going to digest it. It could digest other cells that if you consume them. So lysosome's job is to digest. Like Lysol, it's going to clean up the cell. Chloroplasts, very, very similar shape to the mitochondria. Notice chloroplasts are green, mitochondria are not. So similar, it's surrounded by two membranes. Inside the actual membranes are these stacks that actually contain chlorophyll, which is the green stuff that absorbs sunlight during photosynthesis. So the function of a chloroplast is to actually capture the energy from the sun and convert it into sugar, into chemical energy during photosynthesis. So chloroplasts are the site of photosynthesis. Solar energy is absorbed into these chlorophyll inside these little discs. There the reaction happens and sugar comes out. And then you eat the sugar, and then the mitochondria convert that into ATP. So chloroplasts are sunlight into food. Mitochondria are food into ATP. Cytoskeleton, just like how you have a skeleton that provides you support, your cells also have a skeleton that gives them some structure and some support. You have two different types of tubes found in the cytoskeleton. You have microtubules and you have microfilaments. Microfilaments are thread-like, so they're much, much thinner than microtubules. They're made of actin, which is just the molecule that makes them. So they're very tough and very flexible network. Microtubules are much larger. They're hollow and they're made of tubulin. That's why they're called tubules. We'll talk about this in a second. They also form the centrioles. So microfilaments are the actual network that's going to bend when the cell moves. Microtubules have other jobs, which include forming the centrioles and providing more support. The function of the cytoskeleton is just like your skeleton, is to help maintain the cell structure. Microfilaments allow for movement in amoebas, which are single-celled organisms, while microtubules help maintain the shape and are used in cell division. So microtubules are for cell division, microfilaments are for movement in amoebas, and some cells have cilia and flagella, which are these projections that are on the outside of the cells, almost like little tails. So the little tails are actually made of microtubules also. Here we have cilia, which are these little hair-like projections on this bacteria or on your lung cells. So those are microtubules. Here we have this bacteria with these different flagella, which are these whip-like or tail-like projections. So these guys also are made of microtubules. Centrioles. Centrioles are found only in animal cells, so they're not found in plants. It's up for debate, but we're going with it. It's not found in any plant cells. The centrosome has two centrioles. So we can see here, this is known as a centrosome. We have these two centrioles, this guy and this guy, that are formed at right angles. So this is a centrosome. Each one has these centrioles. So this is one centriole. The function of the centriole is that it's used in cell division. We'll talk about it in much more detail when we get to the cell cycle and mitosis. But for right now, you just need to understand that the centrioles are used in animal cell division.